So we kind of finished up with Jesus in praise of the Father in that moment of ecstasy, or whatever you want to call it, giving praise and moved by the Holy Spirit. So that's verses up to verse 22. So verse 23. And this kind of concludes that section of the mission of the 72. And he concludes it, turning to the disciples in private. Jesus says, "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see." So that sounds like a beatitude, doesn't it? "Blessed are the eyes that see what you see, for I say to you, many prophets and kings desired to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." And that can refer to any number of things. First and foremost, it's going to refer to, of course, the power that they were given and the things that they were able to do on their mission. The other, it can also refer to, is that immediate moment where Jesus is taken up in the Holy Spirit and then gives praise to God the Father. So to see that kind of sense of unity of Jesus and the Father. So to also see that kind of prayer alive in a person. So we come to one of the great stories we've got, right? Ultimately, it's the Good Samaritan. But the story they split in two parts here in this. First is the person coming up before asking the question. So there's a scholar of the law. And the scholars don't look very good in the gospel, in Luke's gospel. They're one of the foils, just like the Pharisees were one of the big foils in Mark's gospel. The scholars are one of the big foils in Luke's gospel, because they're going after Jesus or trying to challenge him on various things. And of course, Luke uses them to show Jesus' wisdom that is far beyond their ability. The other is that the scholars tend to be in their books. And of course, the point of the gospel is to send people on a mission. And so you only know part of who God is if you're looking in the book. In order to fully know who God is, you have to do what God tells you to do. So, which is also part of the reason why the scholars come up short in Luke's gospel. So there's a scholar of the law who stood up to test Jesus and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And this is a question that actually will come up later too. So the question is going to be repeated in Luke's gospel by two different people. "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law?" So the first thing is the scholar is going to ask a question that is a reasonable question, but at the same time, one that shouldn't need to be asked. I mean, if he's a scholar of the law, he should know this, but again, he's trying to test Jesus. So Jesus, in typical Pharisaical fashion, as we mentioned in the Mark's class, is one of the things is in order to a conversation or dialogue between rabbis would be, you don't answer the question, you ask a more probing question. So Jesus turns the question back to him and says, "What is written in the law?" Because he's a scholar of the law. So rather than getting the rabbinic teaching or that sense of, what is Jesus or the living tradition going to say, he says, "No, this is where you're an expert. You tell me, what's in the law? How do you read it?" And he said in reply, and now what he's going to say in reply is actually a combination of a teaching from Leviticus and a teaching from Deuteronomy. One from Deuteronomy is known as the Shema Yisrael, which is the standard prayer, kind of morning prayer of the Israelites. It's actually spelled with a Y. Yisrael. And most people would spell it, yeah, but it's actually supposed to be spelled with a Y.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
At those times,
Mm-hmm.
what was the meaning of being or becoming a scholar? It was a higher teacher. I heard that.
Well, yeah, it was someone who spent their time studying and usually studied under a number of teachers. So there was no university system. Obviously, that was invented by the Catholics in the 9th, 10th century, somewhere around there, maybe 11th century. So there's no university system, but anyone who studied under a number of other teachers. So scholars, and scholars would be in various areas. Most of the time you'd have scholars in terms of philosophy, or you'd have scholars in terms of theology, like rabbis or various other priests or teachers. Which, of course, a rabbi is different than a priest. A priest in those days was someone who offered sacrifice. He was not meant to teach the law. He was not meant to kind of like guide the people. He was there to act in the person of the community and to act in the person of God, to make the sacrifice. But the rabbis were the ones who gave teaching. And so you would be a rabbinic scholar, one who studied under the rabbis. You'd be a scholar of the law. Of course, the law of Israel is more of a theological understanding than simply a civil code. But it is a code of conduct. But it's a code of conduct based upon what God wants of us, as opposed to what makes the society just or fair. Most of the laws that we know, civil laws, are actually built off the Mosaic Law anyway, because it is a just and fair society. So things like do not steal, that keeps everybody safe. So, but anyway, so the scholar is just someone who spends their time studying, but they'd be studying under other people who would be recognized as leaders in their field.
Am I right? Scholars were born according to the Greek teachings.
There were what? According to Greek?
There were followers of Greek teachings.
No. There are scholars under Greek teachings, but this is definitely a Jewish and a Jewish understanding. There were Jewish scholars as well, and as I said, there were rabbinic scholars. So there were people who studied under rabbis as well as people who studied the law of Moses. Yeah.
What book are you in again?
Luke's Gospel. I'm sorry.
Luke.
Chapter 10. Starting, we're somewhere past like 25 or whatever. Yeah, 25.
Okay.
We got a couple of Bibles here we can make up too. But chapter 10, verse 25. Right.
Okay, thank
Am I right?
So he goes back, and so he's going to do two things. One is, Leviticus is the one that says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? It also talks about you should not mistreat the foreigner or the alien within your land. You shall treat him as a neighbor. So that's one of the things I have up on the sign. So that's half of what Jesus is, or that's half of what this guy is going to say. The other half, of course, is from the Shema, which is to love God completely. So, and so he has these two, but he puts the Shema first. How do you read it? And he said in reply, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind. And your neighbor as yourself. So the neighbor as yourself is Leviticus, the other part is the Shema. Now in Deuteronomy, there's only 3 mentioned. And so what happens, though, is that there's a translation from the Greek, from the Septuagint, that sometimes creates the 4. So the Greek word that is heart, or the Jewish word that is heart in the original Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, is sometimes translated in Greek as heart, sometimes it's translated as mind. Because the word is actually the seed of understanding. So, and again, depending upon your point of view, if you have a scholar's mind, it might be in your mind. If you have a poet's mind, it might be in your heart, right? So the seed of understanding, so where you understand things, that's the word that is the Hebrew word, the seed of understanding. So when it gets translated into Greek, it gets translated sometimes as mind and sometimes as heart. And so in Luke's Gospel, he puts them both in, so that way we cover it all. So, with all your heart, and that would normally say with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. He replied to him, you've answered correctly, do this and you will live. So you notice that Jesus answers, so the scholar gives the question, and Jesus just says, you have replied correctly. So you're correct. And then he says, do this. Because, of course, scholars study this. But if you want to have eternal life, you have to do this, not study it. And so now we've got this separation between what we know and what we do, which, of course, is the essence of sin, right? When what we know isn't what we do, that's when we sin. So we've got this kind of built up here. Answer correctly, do this and you will live. but because he wished to justify himself. So, and again, the New American Revised Edition sets it up in a kind of a separate section, but it's the same thing. Yeah, same conversation. He wished to justify himself. So now he's testing Jesus. The first time is to test. Second time is to justify. Because of course, he needs to justify himself because he hasn't done this. He knows this, but he hasn't done this. So now he needs to justify himself. And he says, who is my neighbor? So he kind of, again, does this rabbinic thing and says, okay, love your neighbor as yourself. And then rather than asking about God, he says, who is my neighbor? Because of course, God is an absolute. But your neighbor, well, that could be your next door neighbor. It could be a family member who is nearby. It could be the neighbor on the other side of the city, or it could be a foreigner who just happens to be kind of in the neighborhood. So, right, exactly. So the sense of who is my neighbor is, well, how far do I have to take this? You know, how big does this go? And can I limit this? So what constitutes neighbor in this instance? And remember the correct answer here is love your neighbor as yourself, right? Okay, so now Jesus starts up with one of the most famous parables we have. Jesus replied, a man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. So, parable of the Good Samaritan, right? And let's go to the map here. Jericho is down here by the Dead Sea, or the Salt Sea as it's called. So it's in a deep valley. It's below sea level. As the Dead Sea is 1,200 feet below sea level. Jericho is below sea level. Jerusalem's on a mountaintop, so you're going down about 3,300 feet from the top of Jerusalem, or from Jerusalem down to Jericho. So it's a decline of about 3,300 feet in elevation. It's about 17 miles. So there's an expressway that does this now for the tourists, but there's still the old Roman road that was built that kind of winds along the ravine, because there's actually a ravine that comes down, that runs the water down as it's crashing down the mountainside when it does rain. So, a man fell victim to robbers as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho. Quite possible, easy enough to do. It's a wilderness area. Close enough to the city that people can live there, but far enough away that you can do things out there, not get caught, and lead people, and they won't know that they're there. So a priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw the man, he passed by on the opposite side. So remember, the guy's half dead, right? So when you're half dead, you look dead, don't you? Okay. So when we talk about the priest and the lawyer passing by the guy, remember, touching a dead person makes you impure. And of course, the priest is supposed to stay pure so he can offer the sacrifice. So if the guy thinks he's dead, it's a good excuse, but he didn't check it out either. But so it's like, well, I should look at the guy, but then I can't offer sacrifice. And but he's going down the same way, which means he's coming away from Jerusalem, which means he's not going to offer sacrifice. He's probably done offering sacrifice and going home, which means he has no reason to have to stay pure. So he could have checked the guy out. So the priest goes down and goes on the opposite side of the road, obviously keep himself pure. Likewise, a Levite, which is a lawyer, comes to the same place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. Okay, so we already talked about Samaritans last week, right? And Samaria. Remember, Jesus was going to go through a Samaritan town and they wouldn't take him? Why wouldn't they take him? You don't remember that, okay. Remember, the Samaritans followed the Jewish law. They followed the Jewish religion, but they believed the place to worship is on the mountain, not in Jerusalem. And they believed that worship should be offered as in Shechem, as in the days of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So they see it as a pure worship. Remember, when Jesus meets the Samaritan woman in John's Gospel, it's at Jacob's well. So the patriarchs, the original Jews, all worshipped on the mountain. So the Samaritans want to do that. The Jews don't hold to the Samaritans as true Jewish people because after the conquest of the Assyrians, there was intermarriage, and so they don't see them as purebloods. Okay? So, if they're not purebloods, you know, they're mudbloods, as they say in Harry Potter, right? So they're not purebloods, so the Jews looked down on them, and of course the Jews had built up the temple, you know, from Solomon's days, so you're talking centuries before, but the idea that now worship should be held in Jerusalem, in the capital, and in the temple. So there's theological differences, kind of like the theological differences between the Orthodox and the Catholics. They're not that big of a difference, but big enough to keep them separated. But there's also the political differences in the sense of the sense of blood and who's purebred and who's not. So, and that kind of you find that question many times in many places, countries, the people with nationalities, families. They all have that. Well, you can't marry this person; they're not Filipino. Or you can't marry this person because you know they're from southern Italy, not northern Italy. You know, all kinds of crazy things. So. The Samaritan, as travelers who came upon him, was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him on his own animal, took him to an inn and cared for him. Next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instruction, "Take care of him. If you spend more than what I have given you, I shall repay you on my way back." Which of these three, in your opinion, now Jesus asked the question. So the original question was, you know, who is my neighbor? So now Jesus gives them the story and then throws in the question. Which of these three was neighbor to the robber's victim? Okay, and the man answers, the man doesn't say the Samaritan, does he? He can't say it, because that would be just awful. You know, to admit that a Samaritan, because he's Jewish, a Samaritan would do such a good thing. So he says, the one who treated him with mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. So let's take this through a little bit more. So in the Greek, the words that the Samaritan sees the man, he's moved with compassion. And approaches, right? That's what happens. If you remember back to the widow of Nain and her son, Jesus saw the funeral bearer, was moved with compassion at the sight, and approached the bearer to do the miracle. So the Samaritan is doing exactly what Jesus did. And again, you have the widow, and you have the man who fell victim. So Luke balances it all off. You have Jesus, of course, who does this, who is truly Jewish, and then you have the Samaritan who is not. But the Samaritan is echoing exactly what Jesus did with the woman, the widow's son, from the widow of Nain. So that's the first thing, is that this is an echo straight from there. And the verbs that are used here are the same verbs, and they're only used in those two spots. So the three verbs that are used in the same, are the exact same verbs, and they're used in those two spots. And then as he goes on, so now the Samaritan also, so he then, after he approaches, he then bandages him or binds him or you know, with whatever he has. So he takes what he has and he uses it to heal, right? And then he places him on his own animal, okay? So, and again, not just giving him a ride. You don't know the kind of animal per se. Presumably it's a horse, but it could have been a donkey or a mule or whatever. But that other sense of that is Jesus getting on the donkey to go into Jerusalem. So it's been healed. Because Jesus is there to heal. He's on the animal. And then, of course, he takes him to the inn. So places him on the animal, takes him to the inn. And the translation we have says 2 silver coins. Now, the commentary I was reading basically said that this was 2 denarii, which is 2 days' wages. So, and I'm not sure that people would pick that up from the translation that says 2 silver coins, because normally you don't think of a silver coin as a day's wage. A denarii was not a particular silver coin. It was a coin more like copper, or some kind of a baser metal. But so I'm not sure if the translation is off or if the commentator was just off in terms of that person's understanding of the value of the coins. But the idea was 2 days' wages, which is a significant amount when you think about it. You know, you're only working 5 days or 6 days a week. That's a third of your pay has just gone to take care of this person. So it's a significant amount of money, certainly more than a tenth. And then, of course, there's still the promise that if you need more, I will give you more on my way back. So I'm not just leaving; I'm returning the check on it, which of course is another aspect of it. So I'm coming back, and if there's more, I will pay you more. So there's promise of more care to come. Which again, when you think about what Jesus does, not only does he heal our wounds and takes upon himself the burden, but then when we sin, he comes back to forgive us again. And he checks up on us to make sure that we are on the right path. So that sense of mercy. And, you know, again, which of these three, the one who treated them with compassion. Now, if you look at this, though, when Jesus says, who was neighbor to the man who fell victim to the robbers? The neighbor is not the one who was loved. Neighbor is the one who loved. Okay? So the original answer was love your neighbor as yourself. So the neighbor is to receive the love, right? So who should I share my love with? Who should I give my love to? Who should I, be compassionate with, or whatever, would be the question when he says, who is my neighbor? And the parable that Jesus tells is not the one who is giving, but the one who's receiving. And so, again, to recognize that the neighbor is the one who should be receiving your love.
It can be too, like if you walk in, somebody in here, that's your neighbor.
Right.
Even if not living to your side, just walking.
So again, if you look at what's happening here, you also have a number of the works of mercy going on, don't you? So you have caring for the sick, okay, and you have taking care of the stranger, okay, or welcoming the stranger. You have, in a sense, you have forgiving others, healing others, praying for others. He's coming back. If you look at Jesus just telling the story in terms of helping the scholar understand, you have correcting others going on. So you have a number of spiritual works of mercy, but you also have a couple of the corporal works of mercy. And again, he's providing food and drink for the man. So give drink to the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, give food to the hungry, shelter the homeless, because now he's got shelter in the inn. Really, care for the sick. He's taking care of them. So the only thing he doesn't have to do is bury the dead, because the guy's not dead. So he's pretty much got the works of mercy covered. So Luke doesn't have the works of mercy anywhere. That's Matthew's gospel, but they're all tied up in here. Okay. So we have the story of the Samaritan, very clear, very set forth. Now Jesus is going to Martha and Mary's house. And where did Martha and Mary live?
Jerusalem.
Bethany.
Bethany. They live in Bethany, right? Okay, Bethany is very close to Jerusalem. It's only about 2 miles away. But in the gospel right now, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, and he hasn't gotten anywhere near there yet, because this is going to take us, to chapter 19 or so. So we're still near the beginning of this journey. Again, Luke is not being geographical, nor chronological in his order. He's putting things in what he sees as a reasonable order. He's trying to present a message to us, and so the geography is messed up or the chronology is messed up. That doesn't matter. He's trying to give us a message here. And we saw that once or twice in Mark's gospel, where we seem to have Mark Jesus going up and down. But in Luke's gospel, it's even more evident, because he's up here and he's down here and he's up there and he's down there, but he's never really in Jerusalem until he sets his face toward Jerusalem. So this is happening. So right now he'd be over here at Bethany, which is right next to Jerusalem, but he just left from up here. So we have the story of Martha and Mary, 2 wonderful sisters. And remember, when we started the journey, we had the story of the 2 brothers, James and John, who were willing to call down fire from heaven because the Samaritans wouldn't welcome Jesus. But now you have the 2 sisters who are going to welcome Jesus. So as they continue their journey, they enter the village, and Luke doesn't say where the village is. So we only know that it's in Bethany because John mentions Bethany as the town for Lazarus and Martha and Mary. But Luke doesn't mention a town. And this again is typical of Luke. There's a couple of times that you get this in a certain place or in a certain village. So and everybody would have known Martha and Mary. You know, all the gospel writers would have known Martha and Mary. And it would have been easy enough for Luke to be able to say, and because Luke is the guy who says, I investigated everything myself. So this omission is not a mistake. He doesn't want to tell us the town because that would put Jesus too close to Jerusalem. So just in a certain village. Okay? He entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat beside the Lord at his feet, and listening to him speak. Now, what was supposed to happen remember the transfiguration which happened just before Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem? What did the voice from heaven say? This is my beloved son. Listen to him. So, again, Mary is doing exactly what God told us to do. Listen to him. So she sits down to listen to him. Listening to him speak. Martha. So we have Martha. Wonderful Martha. Who always gets a bad rap, and she shouldn't, because she's taking care. Without Martha, we have no party. We have no dinner. So don't give Martha a bad rap, because she want to eat. So Martha though is burdened. So she's not just doing all this stuff. This is now a burden for her. Okay? And that's the difference. So, yeah, exactly. It's not because she's trying to welcome them or she's offering hospitality. She's now feeling the burden of all this. So to do this is to put her outside of where she should be. Where should she be? At the feet of Jesus, listening to him, right? But instead, she's got all these other things she's worried about. Remember that Jesus warned us about the seed that falls on the path and gets choked off, or it falls amongst the weeds and gets choked off with other things going on. So Martha has Jesus in her house, but her hospitality is being choked off by the need to make this dinner happen. So this is what's going on with Martha. So and burdened with much serving, came to Jesus and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." So again, if somebody did that to me, I would get up and help them. I wouldn't tell the sister to. I'd get up. Oh, I'm here. I'll go help you, and make it happen. But Jesus wants to emphasize that Mary's got what she's supposed to be doing. That's what she's supposed to be doing. But you notice that Martha says to Jesus, she doesn't call him Jesus. She calls him Lord. So she gives him the proper title. She recognizes and respects him greatly. So, "Lord, do you not care that my sister? Tell her to help me." And the Lord said to her in reply, and then again he says her name twice, so it's a very loving thing to do. "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the good portion, and it will not be taken from her." Now it doesn't mean to say that what Martha is doing is a bad thing, or that Martha has made some mistake. But he's going back to this, you're anxious, you're worried. And there's many things, and yeah, there are. But really, there's only one thing that's important. Remember, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. There's only one thing that's important. And you missed it. You missed it. So you've got, now you've got if you put those two stories together, the finishing up of the Good Samaritan parable with the scholar and the Martha and Mary story. So the scholar says, how do I inherit eternal life? Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so what does Luke do? He says, well, here's a story of how you love your neighbor, and here's a story of how you love God. So he takes the two. He takes that law that the lawyer has. He gives you examples in reverse and says, here we go. So again, it's that balancing act that Luke always does. He sets it up. Okay, so here's the neighbor. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's how you should love God. Listen to him. Okay? So sit down, put everything else out of your mind, and listen what God has to say to you. Okay, so now, chapter 11. So moving forward. The Lord's Prayer. And if you notice how it's the intro to this is a little bit different than in Matthew's Gospel, and the prayer itself is different than Matthew's Gospel. It's shorter than in Matthew's Gospel. Jesus was praying in a certain place. Remember, he went to a certain village, now he's praying in a certain place. Okay? And when he had finished, one of his disciples said to him, and again, it's one of those things, one of his disciples, that would have been held on to. You know, whoever had the courage to ask that and get this prayer, you would think that we would know that. Because it just seems like an important thing. So if somebody wants to be famous, that's what you're famous for. I was the one who got Jesus to teach us the Lord's Prayer. So anyway, so one of the disciples said, Lord, teach us to pray just as John taught his disciples. So he's going to kind of balance this. So, you know, so you're our rabbi, or you're our prophet, because John wasn't a rabbi, he was a prophet. So John's a prophet, you're our prophet. John called people to conversion, you're calling us to conversion. Do for us what John did for his disciples. So again, a sense of balance in there. But the other part of that is, it comes because Jesus is praying. And so because they know that Jesus has this special relationship with the Father, they can see it because we've seen time and time again, whenever Jesus has to make a decision in Luke's Gospel, it always involves prayer. And so they see that Jesus is always going to pray, and they want to have that relationship too. Remember, these are the guys, they now have power, they now have authority, but they don't quite have relationship the way, you know, they know that Jesus has. So, and the whole journey, the whole point of the journey is to finish the teaching, you know, kind of finish molding the disciples so they're ready to go off on their own. And so one of the things they need to do is to have that relationship. So Jesus said to them, when you pray, and then he gives the 5, and they call it petitions. I never called them petitions before I read Pope Benedict's thing. But there's 5 petitions in Luke's version, and there's 7 petitions in Matthew's version. So when you pray, say, Father, hallowed be your name. So first thing, of course, Jesus spoke Aramaic, and the Aramaic word for father is Abba, which is best translated as daddy. But you can translate it as father. But it's a term of endearment. It's not a formal term. But Father, hallowed be your name. And again, that all depends upon whether this is a subjunctive tense or I forgot the other tense. Or if he's making a statement. If he's making a statement, you know, you're simply saying, your name is holy, hallowed be your name. If it's a petition, then it's the subjunctive tense, may your name be holy, or may your name be held holy. And the English translation, the common English translation, and the same thing in the Spanish, Sanctificado sea tu nombre, hints at it could be either. It could be either. So it can be both the petition, may your name be holy, as well as the statement, your name is holy. Okay?
Is that an acknowledgement?
Yeah, an acknowledgement. So when before he was a bishop or before he was archbishop, Wilton Gregory was my liturgy teacher, and so one of the things he did is he said, when you're praying, you know, if you've got to pray extemporaneously, you know, there's a quick, easy formula to do this. First thing is, call God in name. So, Father, Lord, all-powerful God, God Almighty, call God a name. Say something nice. You are holy throughout the whole earth, or all the earth adores you, or hallowed be your name. Okay, say something nice about him. Then ask for what you want. Give us this day our daily bread. And then conclude it through Jesus Christ our Lord. And there's your formula for prayer. So, if you want to know how to pray, if you need to pray in front of a group, call God a name, a good name. so call out to God, say something nice about him, ask for what you want, and get out of there through Jesus Christ. Okay? So, and you won't go wrong. It's nice and easy, great, and you won't find yourself, you know, kind of like, oh. So anyway, and that actually happens here, except for the Jesus Christ part, because of course it's Jesus actually doing the talking. So, but it's, you know, call God a name, Father, say something nice, hallowed be thy name. And then tell him, you know, and also you could add the other one, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. That can also that can also be a prayer or a statement. Okay, then ask what you want. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses. Lead us not into temptation. Then get out of it. Amen. But deliver us from evil. Amen. So basically the formula works, you know, in terms of the prayer. So many fathers of the church and Pope Benedict, when he did his reflection on the Our Father, in his books on the life of Jesus, talked about this, and the commentators also talk about these as being separate petitions. So hallowed be thy name, they see as a petition. Thy kingdom come as another petition. Give us each day our daily bread. So that one causes a little trouble. Give us each day. Actually, it causes a lot of trouble. So, give us this day our daily bread, right? Is how we say it from Matthew's version, because the version that we use is actually Matthew's version. But so this daily bread, the word that is in Greek actually is essence. Essence. As in essential bread, or necessary, or substantial bread. So it's translated out as daily, but it's something more than that. So what happens though is, because this takes you into any number of areas. So first thing is, give us each day our daily bread. So you have this sense of this daily blessing that comes to us. You have, what is bread? It's the food, right? The food we eat. But is it just physical food, or is it spiritual food? That feeds our, well, that's the thing. So now this daily bread is not just, give me something from the kitchen. It's give me something that will feed me. And so then you have food and spirit. But then you also have this sense of, well, isn't this Jesus? Isn't this the Eucharist? If you go back to the early church fathers, going all the way back to Origen and Tertullian, so even before Augustine, so go back into the early 4th century, they talk about in the Our Father, in their writings on the Our Father, they talk about this as a reference to the Eucharist, which we receive daily. So daily Mass was something that was going on at least as early as 300. We know that from the day of the resurrection, weekly Mass went on. That the apostles gathered every Sunday, every first day of the week, to celebrate the resurrection, celebrate the breaking of the bread. So that's in Acts of the Apostles, but daily Mass has been going on even longer than that. And so when Christian churches don't have it, and of course not all the Orthodox churches have a daily Mass. When Christian churches don't have it, they're pulling back from something that's a very ancient tradition. And of course, when Catholic churches can't have daily Mass because there's not enough priests, it becomes a problem to the community. It becomes a larger problem to the church because the tradition is so old, it's so ancient. So this bread is on any number of levels here. Okay? Yeah.
I have a silly question. Why the Jews celebrated on Saturdays? Why are we celebrating on Sundays? What made us change?
Two things.
Yeah.
First, we're celebrating. We're not celebrating the day of rest.
Oh,
We're celebrating the first day of the week when Jesus rose from the dead.
Oh, he rose
So
on Sunday.
right, remember, on the first day of the week he rose from the dead. So that's why we celebrate. The other reason is that we got kicked out of the synagogues because we wouldn't stop talking about
Oh,
Jesus.
of course. Yeah.
So we, because the apostles used to go to the synagogue on the Sabbath because that was their custom, and they would talk about Jesus. Like, oh, you hear this passage from Isaiah? Jesus did this. Oh, you see what Elijah did here? Jesus did this. And so they got kicked out of the synagogues for talking about Jesus. So we couldn't go back there. So that wiped out Saturdays for us. but we always had Sunday because the Sunday was always a celebration of the resurrection. So they were both Jewish and Christian for a time until they could no longer go into the synagogue.
Yeah. Every Thursday.
But if you look at much of what we do, much of our forms of prayer, even the Eucharistic prayer, it has a Jewish base to the form. So much of our consideration of how we pray has very Jewish roots to it. And of course, we use the Jewish scriptures for our scriptures as well. So even though we got kicked out, we took everything we could with us.
Special the spirit.
Why wasn't the Jewish religion become the dominant religion? Why Catholicism actually became a dominant religion?
Yeah, I think we paid off Constantine. Basically, the Jewish religion is built on blood before conversion. So there are conversions to Judaism, and that's perfectly fine. So if a woman marries a Jewish man, she's expected to convert to Judaism. But Judaism is calculated through the blood of the woman, through the matriarchal line. Therefore, if your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish even though you might be baptized Catholic. So Judaism is a nationality, an ethnicity, as well as a religion. And so amongst the Jews, there are those who practice the religion aspect of it, but there are others who are Jewish because of their blood. And that is enough, because for Abraham, the only covenant was that you follow me. There was no law. Remember, no law was given to Abraham, it was given to Moses. So the law, the Torah, and all the rituals of the synagogue or the temple, all of that is is much later. So you can be a practicing Jew in terms of Orthodox or Reformed in terms of religion, but you're always a Jew by blood. So there was and because the religion is based on being chosen, so they saw themselves as chosen by God, separate from the world, which means it's not something I'm going to invite you into, because if there's too many of us, then it's not so special. But if you can't get in because you don't have the right blood, or you're not willing to cut off, the foreskin, well then that's your tough luck. But I'm the chosen person. I got the chosen religion or the chosen race.
It's like blood.
Yeah. So it's by both. So, but in order to become Jewish, you have to undergo circumcision for a man. A woman just has to convert to kind of the practices. So if she follows the religion, she'll be Jewish, and all her children would then be Jewish, which then follows the bloodline. Yeah.
I just read this the other day, the Jewish person was telling me, but then for some of them, they don't consider themselves chosen, but that they chose God, so.
I'm sure there are that, and there are some. Obviously, if you convert to Judaism, you did choose God. But the basis of it is from the covenant in Genesis that God chose Abraham. But I'm sure theologically a rabbi would say, and then Abraham chose to be with God, which is true. So you can put that point on either side, and it still works. But the Christians, they went out to convert, and it's still the primary mandate of the gospel is to go out and teach and convert. Teach repentance and convert the world. So the evangelical churches are doing this at a tremendous rate. They're trying to make converts at a huge, rapid rate. But if you notice, the evangelical churches are only going after Catholics. Because the Catholics are easy to convert. Because they already believe in Christ, they already have this sense, they don't have enough knowledge to converse with them, and so you can trick them into thinking that, I was never taught this. So whereas the Catholics go out and we're trying to convert from the devil. We're trying to steal those who have nothing else, and which is why we're getting attacked. But the mandate is still the same mandate is for all Christian churches, and because you get to a point we've gotten so big that we are now stepping on our own tail in order to try and serve the people we have and not going out as much as we should, which of course is what not just Pope Francis, but Pope Paul was talking about this back in the 60s. And then Pope John Paul talked about it, and then Pope Benedict talked about it, and Pope Francis talked about it. It's been talked about for the last 60 years. Even the whole point of Vatican II, one of the parts of Pope John XXIII was to renew the church, not as a sense of cleaning ourselves up, but to enable us to go out into a modern world. And that was the last of the constitutions was the church in the modern world. So how do we bring the gospel to a different world? So evangelization is essential, but and if you're listening on Sunday, I've been talking about it. Being a missionary, going out and evangelizing or spreading your faith for the last few Sundays. But I'm also talking about the towers that have to be fixed, or the bathrooms that we have to put in. So it's like we've got so much to do that we can lose that primary message, is you're trying to fix the roof or do this. And the church that doesn't have to worry about fixing the temple, if the place fell down in the Protestant church, because most of them are halls, they would buy another one or build another one, and that's fine. I can't do that because this is a precious building to us. It has memory and history, and it's not something we're just going to throw out. So we don't just move from place to place. We anchor ourselves. But again, that's because we have sacraments. We have the Eucharist. And so our worship is tied to reality and not just to spirit. So, okay. So, Lord's Prayer. So this is the first part, obviously. So this gives us all kinds of problems because it forces us to look at that in any number of ways, in any number of aspects of our life, in what we're asking God to do for us. And then the forgive us our sins. Now, the forgive us our sins in Luke's Gospel, the way it's written is again very clear. Forgive us our sins, for we ourselves forgive everyone in debt to us. So, the standard translation that we use from Matthew, as we forgive those. In a sense, pushing us, but this one is a statement. So, in a sense, you can't ask that unless you've done this, because you're lying while you're praying. So, if you're unwilling to forgive, if you haven't forgiven, then that's probably why we don't use Luke's Gospel, Luke's Prayer. Because if you haven't done the forgiving, then you can't ask for forgiveness, at least the way Luke writes it. And you notice that it's forgive our sins, but then the other is forgiving debt. And this of course, is a genius move on Jesus' part, because, and St. Paul talks about our indebtedness to sin, or being indebted to sin. But debt in Jewish vocabulary refers back to all kinds of debt. So there's the debt of doing wrong, and so you wrong your neighbor, and you, in a sense, owe them a debt of justice. But there's also the debt of your crops failed and you had to borrow money, or you had to borrow something for whatever emergency came up. In Jewish law, every 50 years there's supposed to be a jubilee. And in the Jubilee, all lands were reapportioned and all debts were wiped out. So,
I like that.
yeah, it'd be very nice. Anybody over the age of 50 would like that. But it's a powerful thing. And remember, in the year 2000, when that came along, Pope John Paul II was trying to push that. Cardinal George had a Jubilee year of forgiveness of debt, which I took advantage of twice, because that was the year I moved from one parish to another. So I got them to wipe out the debt in one parish, and I got them to wipe out the debt in the other parish. I had to do some fast talking, but we got debt wiped out in two places. But anyway, so the cardinal was
Actual money debt?
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the debt at St. Francis is only about 40 or 50,000. The debt at Our Lady of Angels, at St. Aloysius, was 100 or 200,000, something like that, whatever it was. But I got him to wipe out those debts during the course of that year.
What about our university?
We don't have. We're not in debt.
Yay.
We're debt free.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a debt in the year 2000 or not. Obviously, that would have been,
That's what I
that would have been
heard.
Father Cheeto or whatever.
That's what they say.
When we got to school.
Right, right. But there was, certainly there was a debt from
That's
building
what I
the church
heard,
that
that
wasn't
they-
paid off until like 1980 something, other entity paid off the final debt on the church. Usually you have debt when you're building something, and, you know, you're taking it, because the costs of building are always more than the money you raise.
Yeah. Saint Clement used to help us.
Right, right. Oh, they still help us.
Oh,
They still help us, so a significant amount of money. So anyway, so the idea of the debt is a much greater understanding than just the spiritual aspect of sin. And because it's tied to the Jubilee, it's meant to renew us. So when we talk about forgiving debt, it's meant to kind of renew our lives, or renew our sense of purpose.
What about of using trespass, when we have to use trespass or trespasses instead of debt or debtors?
Well, the trespasses, that's from Matthew's gospel. Okay, and the trespasses is again, when you go into an area that is not yours. So to trespass on someone's property is to go onto their property without their permission. But to trespass in terms of sin is to go to an area that is not yours to go. So you act unjustly, you lie, and you're not supposed to lie. You know, that's a trespass. That's a sin. But it doesn't go back to this debt thing. Luke has it in here, and as I said, it's a genius because it ties back to Nehemiah and that whole sense of the Jubilee, and it's actually in Leviticus, but in the book of Nehemiah, in the book of Ezra rather, it's Nehemiah is talking about the Jubilee year, and even though it was written in the law, it didn't last very long because those who are rich don't want to give up their property. So if you spend half your life collecting debts from other people and taking over their property, and now all of a sudden you have to give it all back, that's really hard to do. That's why the church was trying to get nations to do that as well. The richer nations to give the debt of the poor nation. They could not pay it, but many of them would not even touch the idea. Some of them did give away some debt, but not to the point that really helped or change things. But there was a big push in 2000 to try and have that, kind of overall Jubilee. Anyway, so. For we yourself, give everyone a debt to us, and do not subject us to the final test. Okay, so in Matthew's, it do not lead us into temptation. So, again, this. So first of all, final test, obviously, is looking at the point of view of salvation, or the end of the world if you want to go that far for final, but at least in terms of our own lives, at the end of our lives, are we going to be saved or not? So, but final test on a less apocalyptic level can simply be that struggle with Satan, that struggle is the only word I can think of. Everything else comes up in Spanish.
Say it in Spanish.
Well, la lucha, the kind of, la lucha, the temptation. So, lead us not into temptation. But that sense that there's a struggle going on, and of course this testing happens with Jesus in the desert, and the devil comes to test him, right? That's how Luke says it. He's tested. So it goes back to that sense of with the devil. With temptation, with sinfulness, and of course the idea of instead of lead us not, subject us not, because to be subject to means that you are under and you, in a sense, you can't get out of. So it would make Satan our overlord, and we are his subjects. So subject us not, do not bring us down, so that we are ruled by Satan. So again, the phraseology is powerful in how it, sends a message to us.
Was Job then subject to the test in that manner?
Yes. So Job was being subjected to testing, and you saw what happened to him, which he finally got out of it. But it was a struggle. So, okay, so further teachings on prayer. So now to back all this up, and in Matthew's gospel, again, it's the same thing with the Our Father. It's backed up with a very strong teaching on forgiveness, because of course that was the focus there. And you'd think that Luke's gospel would do that, but it actually isn't on forgiveness; it's on perseverance. So, and Jesus says to them, suppose one of you has a friend to whom he goes at midnight and says, "Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine." Lend me 3 loaves of bread, right? For a friend of mine has come in from a journey, and I have nothing to offer him. And he says in reply from within, do not bother me, the door has already been locked, and my children and I are already in bed. I cannot get up to give you anything. So again, that goes back, going right back in line, that goes back to the Good Samaritan thing. I can't do this for you. I've got to keep myself pure or holy, or I can't walk across that side of the street. So I can't be bothered. I cannot get up to give you anything. I tell you, if he does not get up to give them the loaves because of their friendship, he will get up to give them whatever he needs because of his persistence. So the teaching that Luke is trying to, or Jesus is emphasizing in Luke's gospel, is the persistence in prayer. And that's not necessarily the repetition, but the persistence to know that we need this bread daily. We need this help on a constant basis. So we keep praying, and so then he continues on with that whole sentence. And I tell you, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. So the 3 verbs.
Some of those doesn't happen today.
Mm-hmm.
Knock at the door, nobody will open.
Seek. Yeah.
Especially legal terms.
Right, yes. But that's, so the 3 verbs is very clear. Ask, seek, find. And, which, again, are the spiritual life, in a sense. Okay? Ask for the Lord, for His presence in you, or for, to be saved. Seek out His teachings, and you will find Him. So everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, the one who knocks, the door will be open. And then the comparisons, what father among you would hand his son a snake when he asks for a fish, or hand him a scorpion when he asks for an egg? If you then who are wicked know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Father in heaven? Now, Matthew says, give good things to you. But Luke changes that. Will give the Holy Spirit to those who ask Him. So you kind of have a Trinitarian formula here. You have 3 things going on in order to get this prayer answered. But then, of course, the answer to the prayer is being given the Holy Spirit. So we just had Jesus in communion with the Father, and previously to the Good Samaritan parable, you have Jesus in communion with the Father because He's filled with the Spirit. Now you have Jesus in communion with the Father, and of course the result of that prayer is the gift of the Holy Spirit. And this change is in Luke's Gospel. It's not in the other Gospels. It's a significant, and of course Luke is one of the ones who emphasized the Holy Spirit. So now the story to kind of back this up. He was driving out a demon that was mute, and when the demon had gone out, the mute person spoke, and the crowds were amazed. So now he's with the crowd. So all up to now he's been speaking to the disciples. Now he's going to be talking to the crowds. And then as we get to the end of this chapter, he's going to be talking to the scholars again. So, going to meet person, and the crowds were amazed. Some of them said, by the power of Beelzebul, the prince of demons, he drives out demons. So again, this is a story that's found in the other synoptic gospels, that kind of a jealousy. Oh, he's driving out demons because he is a demon himself. So he has power over them because he's the head demon. By the power of Beelzebul, the prince of demons, he drives out demons. Others that test him, asking for a sign from heaven. So again, so he's driving out an evil spirit, but that's not a sign from heaven. Because of course, if he's Beelzebul, that would be a sign. Well, I can command you because I'm your chief. But so now give us a sign from heaven. Like, okay, so what's this supposed to be then? But he knew their thoughts and said to them, every kingdom divided against itself will be laid waste, and a house will fall against it. the house will fall against house. And if Satan is divided against himself, how will his kingdom stand? So that is right out of the other Gospels as well. So this whole kind of passage here, but it's in a different spot. It's not after the Our Father in the other Gospels. So, and if Satan is divided against himself, how will his kingdom stand? For you say that it's by Beelzebul that I drive out demons. If I then drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your own people drive them out? So again, you get, okay, so the question comes up, you know, if I'm driving them out by Beelzebul, then who are you know, what are your people using to drive them out? So, because this power is not unheard of. It was this, you know, the driving out demons was not peculiar to Jesus himself, nor to the disciples. Again, just that sense of, you know, being able to heal people. Now, whatever you call that healing, or those demons, whether, you know, you're talking about psychological illnesses, you're talking about real evil spirits, whatever, but it was not unknown. That's why the multiplication of loaves is so important, because that was unknown other than the story from Elijah. The raising of the dead is unknown other than, again, the story of Elijah and Elisha. But it's those were effectively unheard of. The man born blind, unheard of entirely, never before in the Bible. So these are important miracles. The driving out demons is done time and time again, but it's never seen in any of the Gospels as something important. It's just a simple sign that is common. Anybody who has, you know, who loves God can do this type of thing.
Can I say a process of cleaning? Get out of the garbage?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
The pigs?
Right, exactly. So who is it then? By whom do your people drive them out? Therefore, they will be your judges. And then this is a wonderful line. But if it is by the finger of God, by the finger of God. So you don't need the whole hand of God. You know, you don't need the power or the authority of God. You just need the finger of God in order to drive them out. I love that line. It's so descriptive and so powerful. So this is God's power. He has more power in his finger than Satan has in all his armies. You know, so that sense of kind of balancing it off and recognizing, okay, who truly is God? So if I drive them out by the finger of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. So if you can see the finger of God, then the kingdom of God must be here. Because, of course, God's not without his finger, so he must be here too. So that, again, that powerful sense, he's setting it up. And again, the kingdom is not the end of the world. It's not the final test. It's not the end of life. The kingdom is the coming of something new. You know, thy kingdom come is the embracing of the newness, not of the end of time. So, when a strong man, fully armed, guards his palace, his possessions are safe. But when one stronger than he attacks and overcomes him, he takes away the armor on which he relied and distributes the spoils. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. So remember, he had this other line previously at the beginning of this journey, but you know, if he's not against us, he's for us. And now he reverses that. If you're not with me, then you're against me. Which almost is the opposite of that. But he's doing it in the sense of if you fail to recognize the work of God. So and he's saying quite clearly, he's not doing this by any evil. He's doing this because of God. So we need to recognize the work of God that's happening. So, and he then highlights it again, this time with the return of the unclean spirit. When an unclean spirit goes out of someone, it roams through arid regions, searching for rest, but finding none, it says, I shall return to my home from which I came. But upon returning, it finds it swept clean and put in order. It then goes out and brings back 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, who move in and dwell there, and the last condition of that person is worse than the first. So, this is, in a sense, all those other people driving out demons. You know, so again, because it's not an unheard of skill. All those other people driving out demons, they're only driving them out for a time. And the demons come back. Because if they're not using the power of God, then the demons come back. Because something stronger can come in after them.
That is always good to be praying.
Right. Which is, so when you have Jesus who's using the power of God, they're not going to come back. But if you're not using the power of God, if you're not using the finger of God, they're going to come back in greater numbers, in greater force. And that is also typical, that you find that people, kind of return to their old state and worse. Probably, since we don't have as much experience with demons, but you'll find that a lot of times in terms of people who have addictions, that when they fall harder than they were previously. And sometimes it gets much worse depending on the addiction. Okay, again, still speaking of the crowd. While he was speaking, a woman from the crowd called out and said to him, "Blessed is the womb that carried you, and the breast at which you nursed." And he replied, "Rather, blessed are those who hear the word of God and observe it." And that of course, goes back to Mary, Martha's sister. But again, you have another beatitude. So remember, we only had 4 beatitudes before. We had 4 good and then 4 bad. So now little by little we're getting a couple more beatitudes in kind of in a format. But again, so he's highlighting, don't stick in this world and don't look at what you see, but look at what I'm telling you. And so you should be listening to the word of God. That goes all the way back again to the Transfiguration. So while still more people gathered in the crowd, he said to them, "This generation is an evil generation. It seeks a sign, but no sign will be given except the sign of Jonah. Just as Jonah became a sign to the Ninevites, so will the Son of Man be to this generation. At the judgment, the queen of the south will rise with the men of this generation, and she will condemn them, because she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and there is something greater than Solomon here. At the judgment, the men of Nineveh will arise with this generation and condemn it. Because of the preaching of Jonah they repented, and there is something greater than Jonah here." So he starts with Jonah, goes to Solomon, and then comes back to Jonah. So everybody knows who Jonah is, right?
Yes.
Not over there.
That too.
Yeah. So you got Jonah. So very quickly, what's the story of Jonah?
The word.
Okay, so Jonah is told to go and preach in Nineveh, and he doesn't want to do it because he's afraid that they won't like it. That is what he has to say, so he goes to hide. And of course, he goes off in a ship to go somewhere else to get away from God. And God sends a storm. The storm rises. Everybody's scared. It's like, somebody out here is a sinner. You're doing something you're not supposed to do. Who is it? And then they finally figure out it's Jonah. He admits to it. And he says to them, "Throw me overboard." They're afraid to throw him overboard. Why are they afraid to throw him overboard? Because you don't throw away a guest, remember? You can't do harm to a guest. And he was a guest on the ship. But he says, no, you have to do this. And so, of course, Jonah figures he's going to drown into the abyss. But he doesn't drown because a fish swallows him. A great fish swallows him. We call it a whale, but the Bible actually just says great fish. Swallows him up and then spits him back out on land so he can go and do the thing again. So he can go and do the preaching he's supposed to do. And, of course, he preaches the destruction of Nineveh. In 40 days, Nineveh will be destroyed, and he's really looking forward to it because he got through the city, it took him 3 days, and he said, okay, I did what you had to do, I'm going to sit up here and watch the city get destroyed. And of course, the Ninevites repented, they listened to Jonah, they repented, and God said, well, if they're going to repent, I'm not going to destroy them because they're doing what I need them to do. And then Jonah gets mad at God because, like, you said you were going to destroy the city, now I look bad. Which is what comes out. You make me look bad because I said you were going to destroy the city. And don't worry about them repenting because you've got to destroy it because I said they were going to destroy it. So Jonah gets upset and gets mad at God. So God says here, makes a broom tree grow up around him so that way Jonah has shade and he's enjoying the shade. And then a day later the broom tree dies, and then Jonah curses God again and says, you took the broom tree away from me. And God says, okay, you didn't make the broom tree grow. You didn't put it there. And you're upset about that, shouldn't be, because it died after a day. Don't you think I should be upset about 100,000 Ninevites? So, that I should have concern for their lives as well. So, anyway, so that's the basic story of Jonah. And so it's repentance, but it's not pure. It's, it's again, that struggle. That's typical with Israel, is the struggle with that. Solomon, of course, Solomon is the great king who built the temple, bankrupted the country to do it. but built a wonderful temple, banqueted the country, ended up with 300 concubines, and though Solomon himself was very faithful to God, he allowed his wives to build other temples in the city to their gods, because he took wives from other nations in order to make political alliances. So he would allow his wives to worship their own gods, which of course is anathema in Israel. And so Solomon, God told Solomon, I'm going to take the temple away from you. But while he was at the top of his realm, he was the wisest person on earth. How did he get to be the wisest person on earth? Because that's what he prayed for. He said, whatever you give me, when God says, tell me what you want, I'll give it to you as your gift for being king. He says, what I need is wisdom, because these people are hard to rule. And I need the wisdom to do that. And he said, I'll make you the wisest man ever, and I'll give you the riches and everything else that goes along with it. So he had all that, but he got to spend it. But while he was on top of the world, people like the Queen of Sheba in the south would come to listen to his wisdom, and some to test his wisdom. And of course, there's a couple of stories in the second book of Samuel about Solomon's wisdom. One is the two women who were fighting over the same baby, claiming it was each theirs, and Solomon's solution was, just cut the baby in half, and each get half. And so then the real mother was willing to give up the baby for the sake of its life, as opposed to the woman who wanted the baby. She was perfectly willing to take half a baby, however that worked. But anyway, then the other was the queen of the south came and tried to trick him with fake flowers, beautifully ornate made flowers that no one could tell that they were fake. And so she was asking Solomon, pick the real flowers. Can you decide, how wise are you? Can you tell which one is which? And Solomon actually just watched a bee land on the real flowers and said, oh, those are the real ones. So, he was wise enough to know where the answer was going to be found. So, anyway, and of course, those who listen to him, so those who pay attention to what God has to say, they're going to be able to condemn, or they'll rise up to condemn those who choose to only seek signs or only challenge. And then similarly of light, and again, this would be in Matthew, it would be in the Sermon on the Mount, toward the end of the Sermon on the Mount. No one lights a lamp, hides it away, or places it on a bushel basket, but on a lampstand, so that it gives all to eye. All might see the light. The lamp of the body is your eye. When your eye is sound, then your whole body is filled with light. But when it is bad, then your body is in darkness. Take care then that the light in you do not become darkness. If your whole body is full of light, and no part of it is in darkness, then it will be as full of light as a lamp illuminating you with its brightness. So there's two aspects to this, right? One is, in Matthew's Gospel, this is used as a metaphor for going out and evangelizing, for being a light to the world. But in Luke's Gospel, it's used as a warning, coming back again with the crowds who are now challenging Jesus at this point and questioning whether exactly who he is. It's now used not as a sense of going out, but rather as, how are you seeing? So, so the idea of the light is, how well do you see what is right in front of you? And so if you're seeing well, then you see the works of God. If you're not seeing well, if you're seeing darkness, asking for a sign, refusing to recognize the signs that are being given to you, then of course your whole body's in darkness. Do not become darkness, but be a lamp. And if you are a lamp, if you can see the works of God, then you will be a light to others. Mm-hmm. So it ends with the idea of the light for others, but that's not the main purpose. The main purpose is, how are you seeing? Mm-hmm. Are you seeing with the eyes of God, or are you seeing with the eyes of darkness? So now it goes back to the Pharisees and the scholars. After he had spoken, a Pharisee invited him to dine at his home. He entered and reclined at table to eat. The Pharisee was amazed to see that he did not observe the prescribed washing before the meal. We just had this, didn't we? Yeah. Remember Simon? Oops. Yeah, remember the woman who anointed Jesus' feet with the wash them with her tears? So now it's another Pharisee. This one's not given a name, but another Pharisee, and Jesus does not wash. in Mark's gospel and Matthew's gospel, the Pharisees are complaining because Jesus' disciples do not wash. But here, it's Jesus not washing, which is odd because remember, Jesus in Luke's gospel follows the customs. He's constantly following the customs. So now we have a place where he's not. The Pharisee was amazed to see that he did not observe the prescribed washing before the meal. The Lord said to him, "O you Pharisee, although you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, inside you are filled with plunder and evil. You fools," the translation is better in Spanish. The Old English translation was better too, as rapaciousness or something like that. You are filled with plunder and evil. You fools, did not the maker of the outside also make the inside? But as to what is within, give alms, and behold, everything will be clean for you. So, give alms, which means take care of the poor, right? Take care of the needy. So how do you clean the inside? Take care of others. That's the works of mercy, remember? In Matthew's gospel, how do you get to heaven? You know, I was hungry, you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. You gave me alms. Okay? Lord, when did we see you? When you did for one of the least, you did it for me.
For my son.
Right, exactly. So give alms. So woe to you Pharisees, or you fools, did not make the outside, also make the inside. But as to what is within, give alms, and behold, everything will be clean for you. Woe to you Pharisees, you pay tithes of mint and of rue and of every garden herb, but you pay no attention to judgment and to love for God. These you should have done without overlooking the others. So then now there's two woes. So again, we just had a couple of blessings, right? Blessed are you, blessed. So now we have two woes. We're going to get a couple more. So the mint and the rue, those are simply things that are basically taxed. Okay. So you pay the tithes, you pay the taxes on these things, but you don't worry about loving God. So again, the law is that scholarly law thing. The law is here, and I'm going to follow the law, but I'm not going to understand the law. I'm not going to see that the law is meant to help me love God. I'm just going to, this is what it says, this is what I'll do. Okay, so, and we as Catholics get into that at times too, don't we? You know, we have laws and we're like, okay, we have to do this, and we get ourselves caught doing things that, like, well, why didn't we just love God? We would have done that anyway. So, woe to you Pharisees, you love the seat of honor in synagogues and greetings in marketplaces. Woe to you, you are like the unseen graves over which people unknowingly walk. So, and again, this is set up in a different way than in Mark's gospel in terms of the places of honor and all that. So this same teaching is used in a different sense. And he calls it the unseen graves that people, so you're dead and you don't even know it. Because you're still walking around, but your heart is dead because it doesn't love God. That's why you're an unseen grave. And people unknowingly walk over because they listen to you. But, so now to the scholars. Then one of the scholars of the law said to him in reply, "Teacher, by saying this, you are also insulting us." Because what do the scholars of the law do? They study the law. And they tell us the law says you should do this. So, and so then he says, okay, fine. Woe also to you scholars of the law. You want to be insulted? Fine, I'll insult you. Woe to you scholars of the law. You impose on people burdens hard to carry, but you yourselves do not lift one finger to touch them. Remember, you had the finger of God, which is expelling demons, but you have people who won't even lift one finger to help someone carry another burden. Woe to you, you build the memorials of the prophets whom your ancestors killed. Consequently, you bear witness and give consent to the deeds of your ancestors, for they killed them and you did the building. Again, this comes up in Mark, but it's not actually the scholars, it's the Pharisees and scholars that kind of lump together, whereas Luke has them separated in this whole kind of attack on both Pharisees and scholars. So, and of course, the idea is the people in the times of almost all the prophets were killed. They didn't die natural deaths. So they were all killed. They all suffered greatly. And so you killed them. Your ancestors killed the prophets. And now that it's 100 and 250 years later, now you're saying, oh, there were prophets. We should have respected them. And so you build in these great tombs, but really all you're doing is saying, yeah, we agree with what our ancestors did because we made sure they have a tomb now, so they can't come back. So, consequently, you bear witness and give consent to the deeds of your ancestors, for they killed them, and you to the building. Therefore, the wisdom of God said, I will send to them prophets and apostles. Some of them they will kill and persecute, in order that this generation might be charged with the blood of all the prophets shed since the foundation of the world. So, of course, you have John, who was persecuted, and John the Baptizer, persecuted and killed. And you're going to have Jesus too. And, of course, the apostles, who are going to be killed. I will send to them prophets and apostles. So when he says apostles, he's not talking about the past, he's talking about the future, because the apostles is a new thing that Jesus instituted. We'll send to them prophets and apostles, some of them that will kill and persecute, in order that this generation may be charged with the blood of all the prophets. So again, St. Paul has a wonderful line in Romans when he's trying to tell us about that the law does not have the power to save us. Because only Jesus Christ has the power to save us, and we can't be saved by the law. And his reasoning is, there is only one law. There is the law. It is there's a lot of parts to the law. There's a lot of laws, but it is the law, right? It exists as one thing with many rules. And so St. Paul says, you break one of the laws, you break one of the rules, you've broken the law. And if you've broken the law, then you are no longer pure. And therefore you can no longer be saved by the law, because you are now guilty of breaking the law. It doesn't matter if the law you broke was lying or murder or gossiping or the particular law doesn't matter. It is all the law. So the same thing is happening here in Luke's gospel. Is that since there's one thing going on. So as soon as you kill one prophet or one apostle, you are now guilty of killing the prophets. So the blood of all becomes on your hands because of the one. So from the foundation of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who died between the altar and the temple building. So you have those two great images. So Abel trying to offer his gift, and he's killed by his own brother. Zechariah is killed between the altar and the temple building, which of course you can think of a couple of others. Thomas of Canterbury, Thomas of Canterbury, who was killed between the altar and the sacristy, or Archbishop Romero, Saint Oscar Romero, who was killed just after saying Mass. So that that whole sense of this kind of death continues on even to our age. So yes, I tell you, this generation will be charged with their blood. Woe to you, scholars of the law, you have taken away the key of knowledge. So this is a great line. So the whole point of being a scholar is to find knowledge. And of course, if you're a scholar, you have a lot of knowledge. So you know a lot of things. So because you've studied, so you have all this knowledge. And then he says, but you've taken away the key of knowledge. And then the next line is wonderful. You yourselves did not enter, and you stopped those who were trying to. So, of course, the knowledge he's talking about is knowledge of the love of God. So, rather than studying the love of God, you decided just to study the laws as they're written and try and make everybody do this and this and this, and not see the spirit with which God gave those laws and how he was calling people to know him more fully and to follow him completely. You missed the whole point of the law, so you took away the key, and then those who were trying to learn how to love God, you won't let them do that because they didn't wash their hands correctly. You can't love God because you didn't wash your hands from the smallest finger to the largest finger. You washed your hands the wrong way. So you can't possibly be a good Christian. So it's a great line. You've taken away the key, and you yourselves did not enter, you stopped those who were trying to. When he left, the scribes and Pharisees began to act with hostility toward him, surprise, and to interrogate him about many things, for they were planning to catch him at something he might say. So now the tides have turned. So now we've got the plot against Jesus. Okay, we'll stop there. It's late already. So we got through chapter 11, 10, 11, so chapter 12, 13 next time. And again, some of these are very easy to go through. Some of them, there's so much stuff going on in them. They're wonderful to kind of open up a little bit. Any questions? No? Clear as mud, right?
Did you ever find a scholar during your college time, that particular scholar, who declared himself a Christian?
A scholar?
Yeah. It's very hard, I think.
When I was in college?
Philosophers.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what they are.
right, but I would say, there were a couple.
A couple of Christians.
Yeah. Well, one was probably Gus Velasquez, who's now teaching up at Wonderland, but he was teaching at the college seminary at the time.
About Gordon Sheep.
The other was, again, most of the ones I would name are priests, but Father Bill Burke, who nobody would call a scholar from, kind of a point of view of degrees or working in a particular field. But his ability in terms of understanding the scriptures and reading through the scriptures and explaining them to people, particularly his homilies, were tremendous, were amazing. And so he's a true scholar of the gospel and the scriptures because of his ability to understand them, and he worked hard to understand them. But he was not someone who you would have gone to for classes in Greek or pulling out the words or something like that. But if you wanted to know what they said, he was the guy to go to. And if you wanted to know what it meant to you, he was the guy to go to.
What about Fulton Sheen? Fulton Sheen?
Yeah, but I only saw Fulton Sheen a couple of times on TV. I don't really know Fulton Sheen. These are people I know. And those would be two. I think, in terms of scholars, Bishop Barron is a true scholar. Pardon me?
Father Headley.
Father Headley, yes.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah, and Father Headley. I've only had a chance to kind of be on the peripheries of Father Headley in terms of listening to him at different times. So like when he's come here for lunch or something like that, and you get in a conversation with him, it's wonderful. But I didn't have the opportunities that you all had to be with him for so many years and learn from him and all that. But he is a tremendous scholar.
Father, I have a question. El que was like,
And I have his library, or some of his library. No, go ahead, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Sins es pecado, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, let's suppose like Friday, I was feeling so bad from whatever it is, and I was upset with God. That's very bad. Right? I was saying, God, why you let me suffer so much? Why you let these people do whatever they want with me? Do you think it's pecado? Or?
No.
No?
No, it depends upon where you end with this, because if you have a good relationship with God and you really love the Lord, when people love each other, they get into fights with each other at times, or they get disappointed by each other. So there's no point, there's no problem in screaming and saying, God, don't treat me this way. But the other thing is, though, you have to remember, He's still God. And so, sometimes, you get mad at your sons, or you get mad at, say your husband or something like that, and you, or your ex, and you get mad at them, and you want to ignore them and say, okay,
I have to do yours next week.
You can't do that to God, because He's still God.
No.
And that's where the sin would come in. So, it's like, I'm mad at God, I'm not going to church anymore.
No.
Yes,
Yes, I was a little upset. Like,
right.
why
Right.
you let them laugh
No,
about
that
me or
happens.
whatever. Okay. And the other question was
I don't like to lose. This is the reason why I'm still married to her.
And you always allow.
Only 43 years. And you haven't won a battle yet. but you're hoping to win the war. Okay, that's it? Thank you.
And then your father.